A throne never makes a mistake. People do. Emily Carter lowered her eyes as another silver goblet was placed into her trembling hands, careful not to spill a single drop across the polished marble floor beneath her worn shoes. The grand hall of Blackwood Palace shimmered beneath thousands of crystal candles, their pale flames reflecting from towering pillars carved with ancient wolves whose stone eyes seemed to follow every movement below. Outside, the full moon cast ribbons of silver through stained glass windows nearly 40 feet high, bathing the legendary sacred Luna throne in an otherworldly glow. Every child in the Northern Kingdom knew the stories. The throne had never accepted a false Luna. Kings had ruled for centuries, but only destiny could choose the woman worthy to sit upon that sacred seat. Tonight, nobles from every corner of the realm had gathered to witness what many believed would become the beginning of a new royal era. Elegant gowns shimmered like flowing moonlight. Jewel-covered cloaks swept across the floor. The richest families whispered behind perfect smiles while ambitious daughters silently rehearsed graceful bows, hoping fate might finally notice them. Emily noticed something else entirely. She noticed the frightened kitchen servant struggling to balance an overloaded tray. She noticed the elderly groundskeeper rubbing his aching hands near the entrance after standing for hours in the cold. She noticed the lonely little white wolf pup peeking from behind a velvet curtain, frightened by the overwhelming noise echoing throughout the palace. No one else seemed to see any of them. "Move faster, Omega," a sharp voice snapped from behind her. Emily immediately stepped aside as Lady Vanessa Ashcroft glided past in a breathtaking white gown stitched with golden vines that sparkled beneath the candlelight. Conversations paused wherever Vanessa walked. She had beauty, wealth, influence, and complete confidence that the sacred Luna throne had been waiting for someone exactly like her. Her smile barely reached her eyes as she glanced toward Emily. "Try not to breathe too loudly near the throne. Dust belongs on the floor, not beside royalty." Quiet laughter rippled through nearby guests. Emily lowered her head without answering. Years had taught her that silence often carried less pain than defending herself. She simply adjusted the folded linen in her hands and continued polishing the final marble steps leading toward the throne. Every careful movement reflected respect rather than hope. She had never imagined standing this close to the most sacred object in the kingdom. She certainly never imagined anyone would notice her. A distant horn suddenly echoed through the palace, deep enough to silence every conversation within seconds. One by one, hundreds of guests turned toward the towering entrance doors. Even the candles seemed to stand perfectly still. The massive doors slowly opened, revealing armored royal guards dressed in black and silver. Behind them walked Alpha King Alexander Blackwood. He neither hurried nor searched the room for admiration. His measured footsteps carried the quiet confidence of someone who had never needed to prove his authority. His midnight black ceremonial coat flowed behind him like a living shadow trimmed with silver embroidery that mirrored the moon itself. His calm silver eyes swept across the assembled nobles, not with pride, but with careful observation. Every ambitious smile grew brighter beneath his gaze. Every hopeful family straightened their posture. Emily instinctively stepped backward, keeping herself hidden beside one of the marble pillars. She believed that was exactly where someone like her belonged. She did not notice the frightened little wolf pup darting from behind the curtain until it slipped directly across the polished floor toward the towering staircase beneath the sacred Luna throne. The tiny white wolf pup froze halfway across the marble floor, its small paws slipping against the polished stone as the enormous hall fell into complete silence. Emily's heart skipped. The frightened creature looked no older than a few months, separated from whoever had been watching it, its wide blue eyes reflecting nothing but confusion beneath the overwhelming glow of thousands of candles. It whimpered softly before taking another uncertain step, this time directly toward the towering staircase that led to the sacred Luna throne. Several noble women frowned with annoyance, lifting the hems of their expensive gowns to avoid the little animal as though it were nothing more than an inconvenience. A palace attendant reached for the pup, but it darted away again, frightened by the sudden movement. Lady Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Someone remove that stray before it ruins the ceremony." No one moved. No one wanted to risk embarrassing themselves in front of the Alpha King over a frightened little creature. Emily did not think about protocol. She quietly set down the silver goblet she had been carrying and knelt near the bottom of the staircase, keeping her hands low and her voice almost too soft to hear. "It is all right, little one. Nobody is going to hurt you." The pup hesitated. Its ears twitched toward her voice. Instead of reaching for it, Emily simply waited. She remembered her mother teaching her long ago that frightened animals trusted patience more than strength. After several long seconds, the tiny wolf cautiously walked closer until its nose brushed against her fingertips. A gentle smile appeared across Emily's face. "There you are." She carefully lifted the pup into her arms, supporting its tiny body as it relaxed almost instantly against her chest. A quiet murmur spread throughout the hall. Even several royal guards exchanged surprised glances. The restless little wolf had ignored everyone else, yet it had chosen to trust the unnoticed Omega's servant without hesitation. From across the room, Alexander Blackwood watched without speaking. His expression remained unreadable, but his silver eyes lingered for a brief moment longer than anyone expected. Emily never noticed. Her attention remained entirely on the small creature, now peacefully resting against her shoulder. She gently stroked its snowy fur before carrying it toward one of the palace caretakers standing near the entrance. The elderly woman accepted the pup with grateful eyes. "Thank you, child. It belongs to the royal sanctuary." It slipped away while everyone prepared for tonight. Emily offered only a small nod before turning back toward her duties. She hoped no one had paid much attention. She was wrong. Lady Vanessa had noticed everything. As Emily walked back toward the throne carrying her folded cleaning cloth, Vanessa stepped into her path with a graceful smile that concealed quiet irritation. "How touching," she said sweetly enough for nearby nobles to hear. Even the palace animals mistake servants for family. A few guests laughed politely. Emily lowered her gaze once again and tried to walk around her. Vanessa shifted just enough to block the path. "Since you enjoy cleaning up after lost creatures, perhaps you should polish the throne steps one more time. They should sparkle before someone truly worthy approaches." Emily quietly whispered, "Yes, my lady," then climbed the broad marble staircase, carefully wiping each step beneath the watchful eyes of hundreds of nobles. Above her, the sacred Luna throne rested beneath streams of silver moonlight pouring through the towering stained glass windows, its ancient carvings glowing so faintly that most people believed it was only reflected candlelight. Emily focused only on finishing her work quickly, never realizing that every step carried her closer to the moment destiny had been waiting centuries to reveal. Emily Carter kept her eyes lowered as she polished the final marble step, believing the hundreds of curious stares surrounding her belonged to the magnificent throne rather than the quiet servant kneeling before it. The smooth white stone reflected the glow of countless candles until every careful movement of her cloth looked like moonlight flowing across water. She worked slowly, determined to leave no trace of dust behind. If everything appeared perfect, perhaps she could disappear once again into the background where she had always been expected to remain. Above her, the sacred Luna throne stood silent beneath towering stained glass windows depicting the moon goddess blessing generations of queens. Silver vines climbed along its carved arms, surrounding a high back shaped like the wings of an ancient guardian wolf. Legends claimed the throne had been crafted before the first kingdom was founded, carrying a blessing no living scholar fully understood. It had witnessed countless coronations, royal ceremonies, and sacred vows, yet it had never chosen a Luna without absolute certainty. Tonight, every noble family hoped history would finally repeat itself. Emily rose carefully after finishing the last step, quietly folding the linen cloth in her hands. She started backing away without turning her back toward the sacred seat, following palace etiquette exactly as she had been taught. At that same moment, Lady Vanessa stepped forward with graceful confidence, drawing admiring glances from nearly every corner of the hall. Her elegant smile suggested the evening had already been decided. She paused halfway up the staircase and addressed the gathered nobles with practiced warmth. Perhaps destiny simply requires someone willing to approach it. Several distinguished guests nodded approvingly. Others whispered that no woman in the kingdom possessed greater beauty or refinement. Emily attempted to slip down the opposite side of the staircase unnoticed. She almost succeeded. Vanessa suddenly turned, pretending to admire the throne from another angle, then allowed the edge of her jeweled sleeve to brush against the folded cloth Emily carried. The linen slipped from Emily's hands. Instinctively, she reached to catch it before it touched the floor. Her worn shoe landed awkwardly on the polished marble, stealing her balance for only a heartbeat. A soft gasp escaped her lips as she stumbled backward. She did not fall hard. She simply lost her footing for the smallest fraction of a second. Before anyone could react, Emily found herself sitting upon the sacred Luna throne. Silence swept through the grand hall so completely that even the crackling candles seemed to stop. Emily's eyes widened with horror. She immediately tried to stand, whispering, "I am so sorry." But before she could rise, something impossible happened. A gentle warmth spread beneath her hands. The intricate silver carvings along the throne shimmered like stars awakening after centuries of sleep. Thin streams of white and gold light flowed through every ancient symbol carved into the stone, growing brighter with each passing heartbeat. The stained glass windows reflected the radiance until the entire hall glowed beneath a soft celestial light unlike anything anyone present had ever witnessed. No flames flickered. No magical chant echoed through the chamber. The throne simply awakened as though it had been waiting patiently for someone it already recognized. Every noble stood frozen. Every royal guard stared in disbelief. Lady Vanessa's confident smile slowly disappeared. Even the oldest members of the royal council exchanged bewildered glances, their faces drained of certainty. Across the hall, Alexander Blackwood remained perfectly still. His silver eyes never left the young Omega sitting upon the ancient throne. For the first time since entering the ceremony, something almost impossible crossed the Alpha King's calm expression. It was not surprise alone. It was recognition. Emily's breath caught as the warm light continued flowing beneath her fingertips. She tried once more to rise, but the strange radiance surrounding the sacred Luna throne only grew brighter, wrapping the carved silver vines in a gentle glow that resembled moonlight dancing across fresh snow. There was no pressure holding her in place. No invisible force restrained her. Yet something deep within her heart whispered that standing before the throne itself was ready would somehow be disrespectful. She had no idea why that thought appeared so suddenly. She only knew it felt undeniably true. The silence inside the grand hall stretched so long that every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. Then the oldest member of the royal council slowly stepped forward. Chancellor Edmund Hawthorne had served 3 Alpha Kings, and even at nearly 80 years old his steady voice carried throughout the chamber. The sacred Luna throne has not awakened in over 300 years. His words settled over the gathered nobles like a winter snowfall. No one dared interrupt him. Every eye remained fixed upon Emily. She looked painfully uncomfortable beneath so many stares, clutching the edge of the throne as though apologizing without speaking. "Your Majesty," another council elder whispered toward Alexander Blackwood. "This cannot be ignored." Before the Alpha King answered, Lady Vanessa gracefully climbed the first few marble steps. Her smile returned, calm and composed, although a trace of uncertainty lingered beneath it. "Surely everyone understands what happened," she said with practiced confidence. The servant merely activated some forgotten enchantment by accident. Sacred objects often respond strangely after centuries without use. Several nobles immediately nodded, eager to embrace an explanation that restored the world they believed they understood. Vanessa extended one elegant hand toward Emily. "Come, child. You have embarrassed yourself enough. Allow someone properly prepared to continue the ceremony." Emily looked toward the Alpha King, hoping for permission to leave. Alexander remained silent, studying the throne instead of the people surrounding it. Emily carefully stood. The instant both of her feet touched the marble floor, the brilliant glow surrounding the throne slowly faded until only ordinary candlelight reflected across its polished surface once again. A collective breath swept through the hall. Emily lowered her head. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I never intended to disrespect the throne." She stepped aside as quickly as possible, hoping the evening could return to normal. Lady Vanessa smiled graciously before ascending the remaining steps. Every noble watched with renewed confidence. She paused before the throne, lifted her chin with perfect royal posture, and slowly lowered herself onto the sacred seat. Nothing happened. The candles continued burning quietly. The carved wolves remained still. Only silence answered her. Vanessa forced a pleasant smile, remaining seated several long moments as whispers spread through the chamber. Perhaps another position, someone quietly suggested. She adjusted slightly and tried again. Still nothing. A faint crease appeared across her forehead. Trying not to reveal frustration, she gracefully stood and stepped aside. Another noblewoman approached. Then another. Daughters of ancient houses, respected ladies from powerful packs, women whose names had been spoken for months as possible future queens, each took their turn. None awakened even the smallest glimmer of light. The atmosphere inside the grand hall slowly transformed from celebration into uneasy confusion. Finally, Chancellor Hawthorne turned toward Emily once more. His weathered eyes narrowed thoughtfully, not with suspicion but with genuine curiosity. "Miss Carter," he said softly, "would you be willing to approach the throne again?" Emily blinked in disbelief. "Me?" she asked quietly. "Yes," the Chancellor replied. "Only this time. Do nothing except be yourself." Emily Carter stood motionless at the foot of the marble staircase, convinced Chancellor Edmund Hawthorne had mistaken her for someone else. She instinctively glanced behind her, expecting another young woman to answer the invitation instead. There was no one. Hundreds of eyes remained fixed upon her alone. Her fingers tightened around the folded linen cloth she still carried, as though it were the only familiar thing left inside the enormous hall. "My lord," she said softly, "I am only a palace servant." The Chancellor offered a gentle smile that carried more curiosity than judgment. "That may be true, but tonight we are not asking your position. We are asking the throne." A quiet murmur drifted through the gathered nobles. Some looked confused. Others appeared deeply uncomfortable. Lady Vanessa folded her arms, her perfect posture hiding growing frustration. "Surely we are not allowing a household servant to repeat a sacred ceremony simply because of an unfortunate accident," she said. "The throne deserves dignity." Before the Chancellor could answer, a calm voice echoed across the chamber. "So does the truth." Every conversation ended immediately. Alpha King Alexander Blackwood finally stepped forward from the center of the hall. His measured footsteps carried no urgency, yet every noble instinctively moved aside to clear his path. The silver embroidery upon his black ceremonial coat caught the moonlight as he stopped several feet from the staircase. His expression remained composed, revealing nothing of the thoughts hidden behind his steady silver eyes. He looked first toward the throne, then toward Emily. "No law of this kingdom forbids repeating what destiny has already begun," he said quietly. "Proceed." Emily swallowed nervously. Refusing a royal command was impossible. Obeying it felt equally frightening. She slowly climbed the marble steps once more, careful not to touch the throne too soon. Every heartbeat echoed inside her ears. She remembered her mother telling her as a little girl that fear and kindness could exist together, and that courage was simply choosing kindness anyway. Taking one slow breath, Emily reached the final step. She did not rush. She did not speak. She simply turned, lowered herself carefully onto the sacred Luna throne, and rested her hands gently upon its carved silver arms. For one perfectly silent heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a single thread of pale light appeared beneath her fingertips. Another followed. Within seconds, every ancient carving across the throne awakened once again, glowing brighter than before. White and gold light flowed through the stone like living moonlight, climbing upward until delicate symbols shimmered across the high back of the throne. Tiny points of light drifted into the air like glowing flower petals carried by a spring breeze. Gasps spread throughout the grand hall. The stained glass windows answered with their own radiant brilliance, covering the marble floor in silver patterns shaped like wolves running beneath a full moon. Above Emily's head, the great crystal chandeliers chimed without anyone touching them. Their clear notes blended into a melody so soft it sounded almost like distant voices singing beyond the palace walls. Emily felt warmth rather than power, peace rather than fear. The strange light did not overwhelm her. Instead, it wrapped around her like a familiar embrace she could not explain. Tears quietly gathered in her eyes. Not because she understood what was happening, but because for the first time in many years she no longer felt invisible. Across the hall, the little white wolf pup suddenly slipped free from its caretaker once again. Instead of running aimlessly, it bounded happily up the marble staircase and curled at Emily's feet beneath the glowing throne before closing its eyes in perfect contentment. No one dared move. No one dared interrupt. Even those who had doubted only moments earlier found themselves standing in complete silence as the ancient throne continued shining around the young Omega, who had never believed she belonged anywhere near it. The gentle melody lingering above the grand hall slowly faded, yet the sacred Luna throne continued to shine with quiet certainty, as though it had finally remembered someone it had been waiting for across countless generations. Emily Carter remained perfectly still, afraid that even the smallest movement might somehow disturb the impossible moment unfolding around her. The little white wolf pup slept peacefully against the hem of her simple gray dress, completely at ease beneath the silver glow. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Noble women draped in silk and jewels had approached the throne with confidence and expectation. The forgotten Omega servant had approached only with humility, and the ancient relic had answered her without hesitation. Chancellor Edmund Hawthorne slowly climbed the marble steps, stopping several feet from the throne before lowering his head with solemn respect. He studied every glowing symbol carved into the ancient stone, his weathered hands trembling slightly as memories surfaced from stories he had heard only as a child. The Chronicles were true, he whispered, almost to himself. The throne does not choose the strongest bloodline. It chooses the purest heart. Those quiet words spread across the chamber faster than any shout. Nobles exchanged uncertain glances. Some looked toward Emily with confusion. Others lowered their eyes, unable to reconcile the servant they had ignored with the woman now bathed in sacred light. Lady Vanessa refused to accept the silence. She stepped forward again, graceful but noticeably unsettled. Ancient magic can be deceived, she insisted. Perhaps the throne merely reacted to her unusual scent or some forgotten enchantment. A single glowing chair cannot overturn centuries of royal tradition. Several members of the court hesitated, relieved to hear someone challenge what they had just witnessed. Before anyone could answer, another unexpected sound filled the hall. From somewhere deep beneath the palace, a massive bell rang once. Its rich tone rolled through the marble floors and towering pillars like distant thunder softened by moonlight. Every elder in the room immediately froze. Emily looked around in confusion. She had never heard that bell before. Chancellor Hawthorne slowly closed his eyes. "The moon bell," he said quietly. "It has remained silent since the reign of Queen Evelyn nearly 300 years ago." A second chime echoed through the palace, followed by a third. Each note seemed to resonate with the glowing throne, causing the delicate silver symbols surrounding Emily to shimmer even brighter. Palace servants who had worked inside Blackwood for decades stared in stunned disbelief. Many had believed the legendary bell was nothing more than an old tale told to young apprentices during winter evenings. Alexander Blackwood finally began ascending the staircase. Every measured step carried absolute calm, yet an invisible tension settled over the hall as he approached the throne. Emily instinctively lowered her gaze, uncertain whether she should stand or remain seated. Before she could decide, the Alpha King stopped directly before her. For several long heartbeats, neither of them spoke. Alexander simply observed the young woman whose frightened kindness had somehow awakened every sacred relic in the palace without asking for recognition, reward, or power. Then something extraordinary happened. The silver crest embroidered across the Alpha King's ceremonial coat began reflecting the same white and gold light flowing from the throne, as though two ancient blessings had quietly recognized one another. A soft murmur swept through the gathering. Emily looked up, her blue eyes filled not with ambition but with uncertainty. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "I do not understand any of this." Alexander's calm expression softened almost imperceptibly as he answered with complete honesty. "Neither do I." Yet even as those words left his lips, something deep within the instincts of every wolf present quietly recognized that destiny had already taken its first irreversible step. The grand hall remained wrapped in reverent silence long after the final note of the moon bell faded into the ancient stone walls. No one hurried to speak. No one dared interrupt what felt larger than ceremony itself. Emily Carter slowly looked around the magnificent chamber, searching the faces surrounding her for someone who could explain why the throne had welcomed her when she had spent her entire life believing she belonged nowhere near it. Instead, she found only astonishment. Servants who had once passed her without a second glance now stared with wide eyes. Noble families who had dismissed her as invisible whispered uncertainly behind jeweled fans. Even the royal council appeared to be standing at the edge of a mystery they had never expected to witness during their lifetimes. Chancellor Edmund Hawthorne gently raised one weathered hand, inviting calm throughout the hall. "There is one final tradition recorded within the oldest chronicles," he said. "When the sacred Luna throne awakens, the chosen soul must willingly leave it. Only then will the ancient blessing reveal whether it belongs to the person or merely to the moment." Emily immediately nodded. "Then I should stand," she whispered. Alexander Blackwood stepped slightly aside, giving her space without taking his eyes from the throne. Emily carefully rose from the ancient seat. The little white wolf pup stretched lazily before remaining close beside her feet. As soon as she stepped onto the polished marble, the brilliant white and gold light surrounding the throne slowly faded once again. A few hopeful murmurs drifted through the gathering. Lady Vanessa's expression brightened. "There," she said quietly. "The enchantment has ended." Yet before anyone could move toward the throne, something unexpected happened. The glow did not disappear. Instead, it flowed away from the stone itself like streams of soft moonlight carried upon a gentle breeze. Delicate ribbons of silver radiance circled Emily once, then settled around her shoulders like an invisible cloak before quietly dissolving into the air. The throne stood ordinary once again. Emily did not. A peaceful warmth remained around her that everyone in the chamber could somehow feel without seeing. The little wolf pup happily pressed against her leg, wagging its tail. Several crystal chandeliers chimed one final time without being touched. Chancellor Hawthorne slowly smiled. "The blessing followed her," he whispered. "It did not remain with the throne." A wave of disbelief swept through the assembled nobles. Some instinctively bowed their heads. Others simply stood frozen, unable to reconcile generations of certainty with the quiet servant before them. Lady Vanessa refused to surrender her confidence. "Blessings can be misleading," she declared, lifting her chin. "If she truly carries the favor of the moon goddess, then let the throne reject everyone else while she remains away from it." The challenge echoed through the chamber. Several ambitious noblewomen immediately volunteered, each convinced the mysterious light had finally vanished. One after another, they approached the sacred Luna throne with flawless posture and hopeful smiles. Each woman carefully sat exactly as tradition required. The throne remained silent every single time. No silver light appeared. No ancient symbols awakened. No melody answered. The beautiful relic looked no different than carved stone. When the final noblewoman quietly stepped away in disappointment, every remaining doubt inside the grand hall seemed to dissolve. Emily stood near the staircase, clutching her folded linen cloth exactly as she had before the ceremony began, still looking more like a humble servant than the center of an ancient prophecy. Alexander watched her for a long moment before turning toward the gathered court. His calm voice carried effortlessly through the hall. "Tonight we have all witnessed something that none of us can yet explain," he said. "Until the truth is fully understood, no one will speak against Miss Emily Carter, and no one will treat her with anything less than the respect this palace owes every soul chosen by destiny." The atmosphere inside Blackwood Palace changed in ways no celebration ever had before. The musicians quietly lowered their instruments. The servants stopped rushing between the banquet tables. Even the nobles who had arrived expecting an evening of competition now spoke in careful whispers, as though the ancient walls themselves had begun listening. Emily Carter remained standing near the marble staircase exactly where Alpha King Alexander Blackwood had asked her to stay. She still held the folded linen cloth in her hands. It felt strangely comforting, reminding her that only a short time earlier she had been nothing more than another overlooked servant preparing the hall for guests. She could not understand why everyone now looked at her with such uncertainty. Some faces reflected admiration. Others revealed fear. Neither expression felt familiar. Chancellor Edmund Hawthorne slowly approached Emily with respectful patience. "Miss Carter," he said gently, "may I ask you a question?" Emily nodded. "Of course." Before tonight, had anyone ever told you there was something unusual about your family? Emily thought quietly for several moments before shaking her head. My mother only told me that kindness is remembered longer than pride. She never spoke about ancient blessings or royal blood. She passed away when I was very young. The Chancellor's thoughtful expression deepened. And your father? Emily lowered her eyes. I never knew him. A gentle silence followed. Alexander listened without interruption, carefully studying every word and every expression crossing Emily's face. She answered without hesitation, without calculation, and without the slightest hint that she desired power. That honesty stirred something unexpectedly familiar within him. Throughout years of ruling the Northern Kingdom, he had learned to recognize ambition almost instantly. He found none inside the young woman standing before him. At that moment, the little white wolf pup suddenly lifted its head and trotted away from Emily. Rather than wandering through the crowd, it walked directly toward Alexander Blackwood before sitting calmly beside his boots. The Alpha King looked down with quiet curiosity. The tiny wolf then turned its head toward Emily and gave one cheerful bark before looking back at Alexander again, as though inviting him to notice something everyone else had missed. A faint smile almost appeared across the king's face before disappearing just as quickly. Several members of the royal council exchanged knowing glances. Chancellor Hawthorne quietly cleared his throat. Your Majesty, there is another passage within the oldest records. Alexander looked toward him. Speak freely. It says that when the sacred Luna throne awakens after centuries of silence, the chosen Luna will not seek the king. Instead, every faithful creature of the moon goddess will naturally recognize her presence before the kingdom does. As if responding to those very words, soft footsteps echoed from the open palace gardens. Everyone turned toward the entrance. 3 magnificent white wolves from the royal sanctuary slowly entered the grand hall. They were ancient guardians, rarely seen outside sacred ceremonies, and known for obeying no command except the king's own voice. The gathered nobles instinctively stepped backward, leaving a clear path across the marble floor. The wolves ignored every jeweled gown, every respected elder, and every member of the royal council. Without hesitation, they walked straight toward Emily. She stood completely still, uncertain whether she should move. The largest wolf gently lowered its head before her, followed by the second, then the third. None displayed aggression. None demanded obedience. They simply offered quiet respect. A wave of astonished whispers spread throughout the hall. Emily blinked rapidly, overwhelmed by emotions she could not name. I have never even seen them before, she whispered. Alexander slowly stepped closer until he stood only a few feet away. His calm silver eyes met hers, no longer with curiosity alone, but with growing certainty that destiny had begun revealing a truth neither crown nor council possessed the authority to deny. Emily Carter looked at the 3 great white wolves in complete disbelief as they remained bowed before her, their silver eyes calm beneath the moonlight pouring through the stained glass windows. She had spent her entire life believing she was too ordinary to be noticed, yet the oldest guardians of Blackwood Palace greeted her with a reverence she had never asked to receive. Tears quietly filled her eyes, not from triumph, but from gratitude and overwhelming uncertainty. Please, she whispered almost apologetically, I do not know who you believe I am. The largest wolf slowly lifted its head before gently nudging the back of her hand with its nose. The simple gesture carried such unmistakable trust that even the most skeptical voices inside the grand hall fell silent. Chancellor Edmund Hawthorne lowered his head with quiet emotion. Sometimes destiny recognizes a soul long before that soul recognizes herself, he said. Emily looked toward Alpha King Alexander Blackwood, searching his calm silver eyes for guidance. He stepped forward until only a few feet separated them. For several heartbeats, they simply stood there beneath the pale glow of the moon, surrounded by nobles, servants, royal guards, and ancient traditions that suddenly seemed far less important than the truth unfolding before them. Alexander spoke softly enough that his words carried without needing force. Tonight, the throne awakened for you. The moon bell answered. The blessing remained with you. The guardians recognized you. He paused before continuing with complete honesty. No ruler has the authority to ignore what all of us have witnessed. Emily slowly shook her head. I never wanted a crown. A gentle smile finally appeared upon Alexander's face. That may be the very reason destiny trusted you. Those simple words settled warmly across the hall. Many of the nobles who had once measured worth through titles and family names quietly lowered their eyes, reflecting upon the humble servant who had shown kindness to frightened animals, respect to strangers, and grace even when others had mocked her. Lady Vanessa remained silent. For the first time that evening, she seemed to understand that no amount of wealth, beauty, or ambition could command what had been freely given to another. Chancellor Hawthorne carefully stepped between the throne and the gathered court before raising his voice. Let this night be remembered not because an ancient throne glowed, but because it reminded every one of us that true nobility begins within the heart. One by one, members of the royal council bowed their heads. Palace servants followed. Then respected nobles, honored guests, and finally the royal guards did the same. Emily instinctively tried to stop them, embarrassed by so much attention, but Alexander gently raised one hand. Accept their respect, he said, not for yourself alone, but for the hope this kingdom has almost forgotten. Emily drew a slow breath before offering the same kindness she had shown from the beginning. Then I hope we remember every person who feels unseen, she said quietly. No servant, no child, no lonely soul should believe they have no place here. Her words lingered longer than any royal proclamation. Alexander looked across his kingdom and realized that strength had never been absent from the palace. It had simply arrived wearing a simple gray dress instead of a jeweled crown. Outside, the full moon shone brighter above Blackwood Palace as the ancient wolves lifted their heads toward the night sky. Their peaceful chorus echoed across the mountains, carrying a promise that would be remembered for generations. On the night, everyone expected a queen to prove her greatness. Destiny quietly chose the young woman who had never tried to be greater than anyone else. And from that moment forward, the kingdom understood that the brightest light was never born from pride, but from kindness.